ado, it is the author of multiple novels, including Kisses and Croissants, French Kissing in New York, The French Honeymoon, and her newest novel that I read, We Would Never Tell. Please welcome Anne-Sophie Jouhanneau. Thank you for
Hi,
being here.
thank you so much for having me.
So, this is always an interesting question to ask authors because the answer has yet to be no. But do you like to read, and what is your relationship to reading?
Yes, I would not trust an author who says they don't like to
My
read.
relationship to
Reading has evolved over time.
Mhm.
I did not grow up reading a ton because I grew up in a pretty remote village. We did not have libraries. We did not have bookstores. We had some books at home, but it wasn't like there was, an endless supply available. I think I really got into reading more when I was in high school, where we had, lit classes and books that were assigned to read.
Mhm.
And and I had multiple, multiple phases of my reading life. I think these days I read a ton. I read more than I have ever read. Part of it is I have a lot of author friends, so I want to read what they
Mhm.
write. I get asked to blurb books, so I read those books. I got really into audiobooks
Mm.
a couple years ago, and I do a lot of walking. I do a lot of chores at home, so I find it so much easier to be like, I'm not just,
Yes.
cleaning the kitchen. I am listening to my books.
Mhm.
So yes, I definitely, it's very voracious. I will say sometimes it's a little bit anxiety driven because I will hear of like 5 new books a day because I'm following a lot of authors on social media. I'm listening to what people are liking. And so I have moments where I'm like, just finish the books you have. Like right now, I have a huge, I actually have the pile out in my living room as a visual reminder of like, take a beat on buying new books.
Mhm. No, I get that. I totally get that. And have you always read in the same genre, or what genres do you like to read?
I've always been pretty widely read. I've never really been into fantasy and sci-fi. That's
Mm.
not really my kind of thing. I don't love very detailed descriptions. I don't love very long books in general, with some exceptions, of course. But I read widely. I will read classics. I will read, you know, pretty much, I don't know if it's a good story. I
Mhm.
don't really care. Obviously, right now I read a lot of thrillers and mysteries because that's the
Mhm.
genre I write in, and that's what I hear a lot of great books,
Sure.
and I like to keep up with what's
Now, do
being
you read
published.
in both of the languages that you speak?
I do. I do.
Mm.
When I go to France, that's when I do a big book haul. There's books I go to, whatever, as many bookstores as I can find while I'm traveling
Yeah.
through France. And there's books I really want to buy that I've been thinking about for a while. Others, I don't do ebooks so much unless I'm reading an advanced copy of something and that's the ebook is what I
Mhm.
have. So I wait to go there and buy a lot of physical books. And then there's some that just catch my eye and I will pick them up along the way. So yes, I do. I will say though, I read predominantly in English now just because of the nature
And
of my
what
work and
would
because
you
that's what's.
say are the biggest differences reading in French versus English?
So I think in French there's less focus on genre. There are
Mm.
way more books that are just contemporary fiction or what here you would call literary fiction.
Mm.
Novels are much shorter in France traditionally, much shorter. Like the
Smart.
average novel is 220 pages.
Wow.
It's very common for a book to be, it is not considered a short novel if it's 250 pages. Whereas here it's considered short.
Yeah.
And again, you definitely have books that are 400 pages. That does happen for sure. So that's a big difference. I feel like there's less of people here get really hung up on this trope and this subgenre and this, and I think in France it's just like, no, it's a good story. Like there's
Yeah.
less of that focus. So yeah, those are the main
And what
differences I
book
would
would
say.
you recommend to people who love your novels, whether it's your thrillers or your romantic comedies?
I've things people have said to me that is kind of similar to, well,
Mhm.
in a similar vein. I've heard people have mentioned Leaf Constantine's books,
Mm,
like The Last Mrs. Parrish, and obviously
yeah.
there's quite a few others in the similar like, sort of glamorous,
Hmm.
vein. What else? The Favorites by Layne Fargo, my We Would Never Tell, has been compared to that one because of the multimedia element and the sort of
Yes.
glamorous world. That one is set in ice skating, obviously, it's a different world. What else? That's a great question. I don't know. Um, I feel like Ashley Winstead, maybe. I think all her books are great.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't
Those are good
really. That's a good
answers.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I want to do some rapid fire questions for you, and you've answered some of them a bit already, but
Okay.
when do you usually read? At night, during the day, in the morning?
Audiobooks throughout the day as I'm walking to and from and
Hmm.
doing errands. And then in bed at night.
Okay. Now, you already told us you're not huge on e-books and you love audiobooks, but when it comes to a physical copy, do you like a paperback or a hardcover?
Don't mind. If the
Okay.
paperback's available, I'm gonna buy the paperback, but I get
Okay.
given books a bit as an author and I will take any format. I don't have a preference.
Gotcha. How far into a book do you get before you put it down, or do you always read every book all the way through?
I do not read every book all the way through. I tell myself I try to get
What are
10% in.
3 books that you would take with you on vacation or to a deserted island or whatever the scenario was, and you only get 3?
So my my probably my favorite read of the year so far is Good People by Patmeena Sabit. I'm probably
Okay.
mispronouncing the last name or the full name. I love that book so much. I think about it almost every day.
Hmm.
Um, it's one of those things where it's like I want to reread it, but I might leave it for a few years. I don't want to spoil the
Hmm.
experience I had. That would be one. I absolutely adored The Husbands by Holly Gramazio, and that's a book I think
Okay.
about a lot. That is an underrated book. That is the
Really?
author. This is her first. This is her first novel and her only novel so to date. So that's why I thought about her when you mentioned the your previous question. But again, when there's only one book to think about,
Yeah.
it's a little bit. And it was a very successful book. I think it was. I don't know if it was a read with Janet. It was a big book club pick or whatever, but I haven't seen as many people talk about it, and I really really love that book.
Where can everybody find you and where can they get your book? Because at this point, We Would Never Tell is out. Everybody pick
Yeah,
up your copy. The French Honeymoon
it's
is the next on my list.
thank you. They're available from wherever books are sold, wherever you like to purchase books. The I've heard great things. The audiobook of We Would Never Tell, so I really liked it, obviously. But
Yeah.
people have really, the narrators are
Yeah.
amazing, and I if that's a format you like to you like to read in, I
Yeah.
recommend it. Available anywhere you like
Yeah.
to buy books. Where people can find me mostly on Instagram and Substack at ASJOUHANNEAU, my last name, my initials and my last name.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm most active on there. I'm you know, I'm
Hmm.
always easily findable. Easily
Mm.
findable is.
And Sophie, thank you so much for being here again and giving me any ounce of your time. I really appreciate it. And I always say I really enjoy kind of talking to the people behind the pages of the books that you enjoy reading. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Kendall. It was a great conversation. I love all the books you recommended. Sound right up my alley. So I will